Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And today, we are coming to you to discuss something that we've been playing the absolute crap out of over the past month and a half or so, 2 months. And it is so good that we're just going to take a whole podcast episode to talk about it. Because, why stop? And that is a little game put out by Snarling Badgers Studios. You might know Uncle Adam or Vince Ventrella from YouTube. Wonderful, wonderful content creators in the community who made another game they've put out. I think this is their 5th or 6th
game. I think
so. But this one really tickled us in a very particular way. And that is Death Wizards, which John and I both have physical copies of.
We do. Mine's in my bag because it hasn't left that bag because it keeps going with me places so I can show other people and randomly play it.
And we have fallen in love with it, and we just kind of want to talk about why we have enjoyed it so much, and why we think maybe you might need to try it yourself. Before we do that, first we got to talk about hobby time and game split. All right, John, what have you been up to?
Nothing.
Very helpful, John.
I've been getting ready for the move and getting ready, and getting in the car accident has just sort of killed all ability to do hobby for me. Between having to start organizing everything away and doing all that other stuff, and also just there hasn't been time with everything going on, and I want to try to play more games. But again, this unfortunate accident sort of put me out of commission for playing too much. So it has prevented me from getting to play a bunch. I did get to play a couple games of 40K in the last 2 weeks. I played 2, maybe? I think it was 2. I know I at least played 1 against Thousand Suns to sort of get ready for our big narrative event that's coming up. And I'm working on some narrative stuff. But nothing grand. I'm not doing my usual painting most of the nights of the work week. I'm not playing games on the weekends a ton. I'm sort of playing when I can, doing what I can, but it's just all starting to fade away as the move happens. And then it's going to explode once I live 10 minutes from you, Joe, and we can play basically whenever we want.
God, we won't have to organize a 2-hour drive at every get-together.
I know.
Whew. It's going to get a lot easier. Don't get me wrong, we've played quite a bit of games for the show, but y'all, it is a little difficult when you are 2 hours away from your primary gaming buds. I'm for people also who live out here in the less logistically developed areas of the U.S., you understand. You just understand that a 45-minute drive is necessary to do just about any hangout. And we've pulled it off, but God, we're going to get so much more in.
So much. It opens up avenues for us to play during the work week with each other all the time and not have to do things like TTS. We can just show up and play. And all sorts of different games, which is a thing that we're probably going to be talking about on the show more often. So we can just play as much as we want, really.
And be at the shop more. Because really, I want to try to get people together just in the shop more often. And I think it's an easier ask when we don't have to organize, again, 2 hours of travel time for every hangout sesh. Speaking of other games, for me, I've been doing a lot of building and prep. Obviously, I've done some gaming as well, getting test games in for the Joe HammerCon event that we are running here in 2 weeks. We asked everyone to do practice games, and I am no exception. So I got to play Imperial Knights for the first time. I've never played them on the table before. That was a learning experience. Holy hell, it was fast turns. My movement phase was lightning quick.
Got 6 models. Of course it's going to be fast.
I have 7 models, thank you. Haha, take that. That's actually, percentage-wise, that's a large increase, but it's fine. Yeah, it was a really fun learner game against Seth's Thousand Suns, and it was a very cagey, techie game, as it is anytime Seth and I sort of post up across from each other. And there were a couple of really like clever touch and point moments, but in the end, the knights were able to pull it out. I was able to sort of like split fire and target priority the stuff off of Seth's objectives, which made it to where he fell behind in points as he was starting to pull ahead in some kill stuff. And I found out never shoot Magnus. That Magnus is, whoo buddy, hard to kill. Really, really hard to kill with that uber high toughness and being able to like blank damage and the 4-up invulns. Very good. But if you kill everything around Magnus, now we're talking.
Modern solutions to modern problems.
I'm pretty sure that's an ancient solution to modern problems, but that's fine.
We'll just put a new coat of paint on it, and it's new now.
Call it
that
new.
Works.
Yeah, it was a really good game. And then in the hobby sphere outside of that, there's been a lot of prep for night stuff because I don't have everything totally built yet and organized. But also, Infinity models came in. Don't want to necessarily say we're going to talk about Infinity on the show, but after people have politely requested we look into Infinity, we probably got to talk about Infinity on the show.
I'm going to give you something more concrete than that. We're currently getting all the stuff together so we can play a bunch of Infinity and be able to give you reasonable, like, actual commentary on it that isn't just us watching videos and making determinations. It's in the pipeline. It'll come.
Yeah. I've also found 2 people in our local community because like I could just, I'm affable, my wife says, so I could just like rustle up people to play with. And there were some really nice dudes in Discord who are willing to do demo games for us, which is great because that game, you need a Sherpa. I have tried to play it without one. It was hard. So they're willing to teach us the game, but obviously they don't have a bunch of minis just sitting around. So I ordered the Hakislam Action Pack box, which is like their starter box, and built it in 2 days. And first time using metal miniatures and trying to prep them and build them, which was inexperience. But they went together pretty nicely. And now I have plenty of stuff to be able to actually demo this game. Currently, the people who are willing to demo it for us are at Gen Con, so we gotta wait till after Gen Con's over. But then, hoping to get some demo games in of Infinity and maybe start adding it into a regular roster playthrough along with Necromunda. At least that's the current vibes. But I've just built all the minis for it, which feels really nice. Now it's just looking down the barrel of Joe HammerCon. I've got one more night to put together, and I've got some stuff to magnetize, because I want to go in fully WYSIWYG for the night's battle. And then also, I would like to do some more painting. I've been doing a ton of building lately out of necessity, but I would like to be able to pivot back to painting instead of just build, magnetize, build.
Good news, you've got Infinity models to work on.
Yeah. I actually think those will be a really good time to hobby up on. It's going to be less high-tech futuristic-y than other factions because of Hakislam's kind of flavor, and especially because I want to play Rama Task Force, which is even less big robot stuff. Like less cloaking tech and less all the high tech, but still, I think I could kind of punch that up to be a little more vibrant and be a fun scheme. And there's far less models to paint, which is just always a benefit. So I've been hobbying in John's stead. Just, whew.
It's much appreciated.
It's a lot of building, which is just less exciting to talk about. And doesn't have nearly as exciting progress photos. It's a whole thing. However, we have done some really cool progress photos and posted them up online about the Flesh Eater Courts. And I'm going to be honest, y'all, the stuff we've been using those Flesh Eater Courts for has not been Age of Sigmar, but largely Death Wizards. Let's talk about it. Hi, John. Death Wizards.
Wizards.
Before we jump into this proper, I do want to say we are having a big push on the Instagram. We've brought on Amanda, who is really, really helping us to do social media because I'm terrible at it. And all of us just not great at being able to like keep up and post hobby progress stuff on the social medias. And she is working hard to make the Instagram more fun, and some of them reels genuinely have me chuckling. So go check it out. If you are on Instagram, linked below, we'd appreciate it. Some of the stuff you will see are Flesh Eater models that I painted up for my Flesh Eater Court faction. They're very dramatic, sort of inspired by old movie posters for horror movies. And I'm really proud of those minis, but I have not been using them in Flesh Eater Courts. I have been using them to play Death Wizards. Overwhelmingly. I have had more games of Death Wizards with those minis than I have Age of Sigmar. And I think that says a whole lot about how cool Death Wizards is. But as we always...
Death Wizards is great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But as always when we talk about games like this, we sort of break it down a little bit. And the first thing we always want to do when we're going to tell you about a game we've been playing and that we're into is to give you the lore pitch of the game. So you could kind of get the vibe, you could get the narrative, and see if you're into that. So let's be honest, for smaller games, a lot of times they will live and die on lore and flavor.
I wouldn't even say smaller games. I think a lot of games sort of live or die based off of their vibe and the flavor of what they are pitching. Mm-hmm. Like, I think there is very few games that are living and staying around long term solely based off of their mechanical play. I just don't think that really exists in wargaming. It just doesn't.
Yeah. It's vital to have. Like, it truly brings the whole thing to another level. And here is no different. And I think is a good portion of why I've enjoyed this so much. The lore pitch for Death Wizards is that far away, in the realm of death, D-E-T-H, not D-E-A-T-H, don't be too edgy. It's a kingdom in a faraway fantasy land where a small-minded community in a small village has feared your abilities and interests since you were young. They have made it to where you are isolated, where you were harassed, where you were unduly persecuted for your passions and skills. And they insisted that your life's work was blasphemy of both the religious and moral varieties. Saying over and over that it was quote-unquote wrong to bring and bind the souls of the deceased back to this world in order to kill people you disliked. And then to raise their long-dead flesh to do your laundry so you didn't have to.
How dare you judge my lifestyle?
This hatred only intensified after a totally minor misunderstanding when you didn't quite understand what they meant when they asked you to bring people together rather than divide them, and your newly made golem of friendship was torched, as was your home, and you were cast out. But it has been many years since that fateful night, and you've grown far stronger in the intervening time. And now, it's time to make them imminently aware of that fact. The whole point of Death Wizards is that you are a necromancer, that you get to build yourself. You build a bespoke custom necromancer of one of a few types, and then you build your own custom undead horde, and then you take the fight to the kingdom. And as the heroes try to stop you, you put them into the ground and maybe raise them out of it. And that is the entire vibe. You're the baddies.
Yes.
Unrepentantly.
I'm gonna say a couple things that you may or may not like. Do you like Spirit Halloween? Do you like horror movies? Do you like goofy, campy fun time? And do you like making Skeletor sounds when playing this game? Then you're probably gonna love this game. I'm gonna be honest. This game is absolutely for ha hee hee time. I've got like a bunch of zombies or like vampires or like skeletons, and I've got a weird dude in a robe, and he's weird dude in robes and cast spells, and he's gonna have his shambling horde come beat the tar out of some paladins and warriors and wizards and stuff. It's a great time. It's great. That is the overall vibe of what this game is bringing. Is like classic horror sort of fantasy stuff, with like just a different perspective, right? Like you're the baddies, but like in a fun way,
in a mustache twirly fun way. Yeah, you and up to 4 friends sort of go out, or you could even play it solo. It does play solo. And you do a campaign where you tell the story of your necromancer and their rise to power. You make a baseline necromancer, you make a baseline necromantic horde that you come into the fight with out of a number of undead. It's actually like one of the things I'm most impressed with as like a as a guy who is a walking monster manual and sort of a connoisseur of beasties, is how deep they went to get a good number of necromantic minions and divide them into interesting subcategories. I'm just going to really quickly run down the list so people can understand how much option you have. You can recruit a skeleton archer, a vampire spawn, a zombie, a ghoul, a revenant, a shadow, a specter, a wight, a ghast, a ghost, a giant skeleton, a giant zombie, mummies, wraiths, a banshee, flesh golem, vampires, and death knights. And that doesn't include the heroes from the other side that you can also try to raise from the dead to make your own custom bespoke minion out of. The options are pretty deep and they're pretty fun. After you make your horde, whatever vibe you're into, you then go into a match that is either PvP or story based. I'm gonna be honest with you, we haven't played this PvP because we really don't feel the urge to. The story based stuff is so compelling that we do story missions, and then
it is like this sort of bridging the gap between like Dungeons and Dragons and wargaming in a way to make it in a much more narrative focused, cooperative sort of play experience, which is very, very fun.
Yeah, it's a really good time. You take your horde, you take your necromancer, and you show up to the field, and you go to do a story scenario. And they set it up sort of kind of like a pre-made map where it shows you the stuff that you have to have on the table, and you can roll for the other terrain pieces. It gives you a difficulty, it gives you a sort of flavor setup. For example, one of the first missions you could do is assault a village, and it will tell you it's difficulty 7, you can have 1 to 2 players, it gives you terrain, and it also tells you how many heroes to spawn. Heroes are the antagonists for y'all. So for example, here, you roll randomly, and it's rating 1d3 plus 1, rating 2 warriors per player, and then 3 villagers per player. Meaning you're going to populate the board with a bunch of, like, sword-wielding fighters, and some peasants who are fleeing that you are trying to eliminate. And your goal is simple in most of these, is to kill everyone there. You have to eliminate them. And if you could pull it off, while these heroes are activating on a sort of interesting AI system that has like a table for each hero for varied individual moves, if you kill them all, you win, and you get benefits at the end of the match. You can raise new undead, you get experience points, you can use to buy new spells or special quirks to make your necromancer unique. And also to expand your layer, which is a campaign mechanic that sort of grows as your power does, and allows you to play this as a pickup campaign that is a little more freeform and loosey-goosey than something like Necromunda, which is more hardcore that you have to play every game of. You can drop in, you can drop out, no problem at all.
Yeah.
The AI system in particular, I find, makes this really, really enjoyable because it gives a lot of variety to hero activations that would otherwise be a little rote. For example, let's say you were playing a normal game and you had enemies on the board, right? And they were activating on their own. Likely, it's just going to say, move towards someone, make an attack. And in that case, all of these different heroes, like paladins and priests and rangers and rogues and fighters and wizards, would be really bland really quickly. But when they go to activate, they have special rules. For example, a paladin has faith protects. So whenever a necromancer uses a power against the paladin, the necromancer must re-roll all successful casting dice, because your dark energies don't work well against paladins. Also, they have action tables. You roll d10s, and you have various things they might do in response. And all of these are different by the class. For example, a paladin on a 2 to 5 will do a smite, which is a big single target damage attack. However,
it's what you think a paladin does. He smites.
Yes. Also, though, 9 to 10, he will do a banishment, where he'll attack the nearest enemy or move to do so. And if it does that, and it has 5 or less durability remaining, it's just automatically destroyed. Because, obviously, paladins do paladin stuff.
Yeah.
However, compared to, like, a wizard, Very different. Wizards will teleport around the board because they have wizards, and they'll use Dimension Door to try to get away. Also, they might throw fireballs, which do more damage, or fiery bolts, or dispel magic, which can allow like debuffs and stuff to go away. They're very unique, so that when a paladin is put on the table as an enemy, it feels very different than a wizard being put on the table as an enemy, or a fighter being put on the table as an enemy, or a ranger being put on the table as an enemy. And priests will make you want to die, as John and I have found out, because AoE healing is good. But we found out if you just beat them to death, the healing doesn't work. So.
Yeah, the best interrupt, actually, best counterspell in any game ever is just a fist to a face. Just punch them directly in the mouth. Apply directly to the forehead. This knuckle to that forehead. You no longer get to magic missile. No more. That is the best thing in every system we've ever played.
And that was my strategy. I'm playing a big, necromancer of war. So I am tough, I'm tanky, I am big and scary. I'm using Flesh Eater Court stuff. So I wanted it to feel Flesh Eater Courty. Like it's a wizard, a necromancer who wants to get at the fray. He's a vampiric being who wants to rend everyone to pieces. And one of the spells, there are a lot of spells that I gave him, was Dark Whip. So I can grab someone who's a certain range away and then yank them into base contact with me and do damage. And it turns out if you do that and then pummel someone, they will die. Great combo. Really fun. And every one of your story missions you set up have different heroes that are there based on the flavor or what you're trying to do. They also have a scaling difficulty level where some are harder than others. And you can bring different amounts of undead to the battlefield. Because over time, your horde's going to grow. Your horde's going to grow maybe quite quickly, depending on how lucky you get at some of these after-action rolls. And as it grows, you might think, oh, won't it get unbalanced? Someone's going to have... if I've played 4 games as my necromancer and John's played 2, I'm going to have more undead. Well, I might, but you can only bring undead equal to the difficulty rating of a mission. So even in a campaign, if, let's say, I can play more games than John can, there is a gate to bring it down to where I'm not just running the table. I have more options, but John is still going to have the same number of dudes.
Yeah, it ultimately just gives you more options. It doesn't give you a power scaling upwards of I'm just infinitely better than you. It's just sort of... It allows for a more open ease of play, of allowing people to come in and out because they've got lives or whatever, which makes it a game that's already lightweight in its nature, even more accessibility, making the game just a really easy pick up and play whenever you can kind of game, instead of having to carve out huge sections of time in order to make it happen sort of game. Which for a lot of people is really handy. It's a thing that they really want. That's just thing. And for me, it goes even simpler than that. It is getting close to spooky time. It's getting close to Halloween time.
I have a countdown on my phone that I can tell you it is getting close.
And we're making trips to Spirit Halloween. We're talking about horror movies.
We got 88 days till Halloween, John.
We have a time, right? And for me and Joe, this is a time that never really ends for us. We're constantly sort of into undead and horror movies and stuff, and so we're always into it. But if you're not, this is a great game, and then the cost is so low to sort of pick up and play during that time for just that vibe, that cool stuff, because it matches it so well. It's really, really fun in that way.
Yeah, unfortunately, I saw the movies Van Helsing and Underworld far too close together at far too pivotal of an age, and now I'm just here for dark, spooky stuff at all times.
Yeah,
but we have talked about though for our group to do a month of October spooky campaign where everyone makes necromancers and we fight our way through a spooky Halloween themed campaign.
We get a fog machine put on the table. It'd be great.
I didn't think about a fog machine. I will fund a fog machine for that.
That sounds like a great idea.
Maybe some LED lights for spooky ambiance. Ooh, we could have candlelit games with candelabras and stuff. All right, I'm having ideas. I'm going to sideboard it. But But like you could make this a really fun holiday thing, or you could just play it all year long, and it's really cool. And we've played quite a bit of it. We have played ourselves together. I've also played against my wife a number of times. We also have played with Brittany and got her involved so we could try out 4-player stuff. And I think all of that together has given us a good spectrum of players. You know, John and I are like diehards. We play a lot of tabletop RPGs. My wife Amanda plays a lot of like tabletop role-playing games, less war games. But has a middling amount of experience having tried them in the past and played them for a little while. And then Brittany, very little experience in wargaming. New to the hobby as a whole, even fairly new to tabletop RPGs. Not super mechanically inclined. Sometimes will like struggle with complex rules. It's self-professed like I'm overwhelmed. Brittany was able to sit down with knowing nothing about this goddamn game before showing up. And then after a single after-dinner discussion, make a necromancer, make an undead horde, and then play her first game and understand what was happening after about a turn.
Yeah, it was very quick pickup, very easy.
Like after one round of us doing back and forth, round 2 started and Brittany was like, okay, I get most of this. Like the magic still took a little minute, but that's just because there's a bunch of spells with a bunch of effects.
There's a bunch of options. Like once the options are breaken down, very easy, right? Like truly, this game I think is probably the most accessible rule set for wargaming, mixed with flavor that is relatable and understandable that I've played. Like I think this is a thing you can put in front of pretty much anyone within 10 minutes if they even have a vague interest in like fantasy undead, and they will have a great time.
If they just liked the anime Castlevania, they're in. Like that's it. It's enough. And I think it answers the question that we always like to ask when we play these games of like, who is it for? So that you can figure out if you might be into this. Like if you're into the lore pitch, who is this for more mechanically? And I think largely this is for 2 groups of people. One, as we just said, I mean, it's great for newer people. If you have friends around you who are less mechanically inclined or they're less into war games, kind of like we've talked about with Rangers of Shadowdeep or Hametsu, this is one of those games that you can use to onboard someone into playing some war games with you without overwhelming them with some of the stuff that gets more complicated or in the weeds. This has much less mechanical heft in memorization to it than something like Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar or Conquest: Last Argument of Kings. This is more approachable. And
yeah, like
rather quickly, you hit your flavor and you're off to the races.
Like maybe you're a DM, maybe you're just like the guy at the table who's there for the combat, and like you play Dungeons and Dragons all the time with a group of people, and you've got some friends who are interested in like maybe trying some other stuff. This is a great entry point. Maybe you're a board game group and you guys play miniatures board games, something like maybe Gloomhaven or like Descent, and you want to try something that's a little bit bigger than that. This is less complicated, I think, than Gloomhaven, but it's also in a lot of ways more open and freeform. I think that like there's a lot of interlapping stuff. Like maybe you play Magic the Gathering, maybe you play Flesh of Blood and card games, and you want to jump into another sort of game, but you don't want to just hop directly into Warhammer because it's kind of a lot of an ask. This is like a $20 physical book you can order online, which we'll put the link down below. We're not sponsored or anything. We just think the game's great. And like truly, if you don't like the Undead game, all their games have a similar sort of vibe to this and are all worth playing. And they have other games down there that are all the same.
I mean, we talked about their first game. They put out Reign in Hell. I believe we talked about it on the channel. All of them have a similar vibe of being a more approachable and bite-sized. And you want that, but this isn't your flavor, go peruse their website.
And they're all miniatures agnostic games. So what that means is that if you are a guy who already has a bunch of models, cool.
Great.
You don't need to buy more for this, right? You can if you want to, you don't have to. But what more importantly is if you're getting new people into this, this is really, 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 really easy to do. Because you can use anything you currently have and just sort of play a game. You don't have to have a big ask of asking a person, hey, can you go out and buy $300 worth of models to play this game with me. You can be like, hey, I have this $20 book. Would you like to sit down in an afternoon and play this game? And then if they like it, they can buy the $20 book, and maybe they can go source some cheaper miniatures from places that they like the look of to match their thing. Mm-hmm. And like things like Undead are pretty ubiquitous and available all over the place.
And a bunch of flavors. So many flavors.
Which means that this game, ultimately, I think is just truly for laid-back people that want to like play casual thing, have a couple beers, like a fun time, and newer people into war games. It is fun. It is not, I would not say it is overly complex. I will say that it is well designed in its simplicity to be fun and still engaging. And even if you're a veteran in these games, you're still going to appreciate the play patterns that exist in this game that have been structured and created for you to have a good time and to feel good using it. Not necessarily spend 4 hours building a list.
Mm-hmm. And it is a game in which isn't a cakewalk in terms of difficulty for veterans. I mean, John and I played our first game and almost lost out the gate. Game 1.
In our defense, we also rolled max everything by accident.
And we did inadvertently play the harder starter mission. We had no idea. We just picked one that sounded cool. And then I damn near paid for our avarice. It came down to the final turn of round 5. If we did not kill the final 2 people, we would lose. And we barely got them. So there's some fun challenge here. Like, you will find stuff here. It's just, you know, you got to know what you're getting into when you walk in. The people who I think this is not for is if you are someone who is looking for more competitively minded tournament style play, this is not going to be for you. While I do think it functions just fine as a PvP game, don't get me wrong, like I could see how there's some back and forth there. It is just something that is so fun for me as a story that it is hard for me to see it in other ways. And even if you decide you want to play at PvP, I don't think you're going to get tournament-style competition. You're going to get fun times, but you're not going to get tournament-level, bleeding-edge, balance, complexity, nitty-gritty balance.
And I think that even the, like, PvP stuff has this, like, narrative tilt to it that could be fun. Like, imagine doing a tournament arc from an anime, but it's all just necromancers.
Mm-hmm.
Like that one part of Yu Yu Hakusho. Like, it'd be great. It'd be wonderful.
You know, like the king's champion goes down in battle and everyone at the table argues over who gets to raise him back from the dead. And okay, we can only answer this in one way. Single combat!
And necromancer single combat means also bringing minions. So,
bringing your horde. Because it's a necromancer. Except my necromancer, who is yoked. He will do single combat. I like this even more. And then after single combat and someone gets to try to raise the guy from death, they fail the roll anyway, and all the fighting was for nothing. But that's what new minions are for. You could just replace them. Yeah, it's just something I'd recommend you play more story and know what you're getting into. Which leads us to sort of like the final review, the summary, right?
Yeah, like our final like rating per se, which we normally don't give like a bunch of ratings, but like we're gonna give one here because it's fun and it's interesting. Like,
I mean, for me, it's like top of A+. It's like A++. It's so good. It's not really perfect, but like what is?
Yeah, it's really, really hard for us to say like S tier game, perfect game, because it's just not a thing. And like, I don't know if there's anything that we would specifically pick to change in this to sort of make it there. The only thing I think the game needs is more options, which I've already talked about.
Yeah, I think more missions is probably the thing that holds it back. But also, it's for the PDF, it's like $10 to $15. It's not a big price ask, so I can't ask for too much.
Yeah,
like they're not charging an $80 rulebook for this thing, so they can only do so much. But I do think that is one of the limiters. Is like you're going to run out of story missions, and if you're down, you can make your own, but then you got to be down to do that. As we have talked about with some other games here on the channel. But that being the only minor setback, like A++, easy. It's incredible. It's very It is a fun little book that, I mean, as John said, he keeps it in his gaming bag at all times. I have it on quick draw sitting next to my table always because it's so easy to just pick up minis and go. Especially with being miniatures agnostic, like we could just use stand-ins for anything. I mean, for heroes, we're using Lumineth Realm Lords and basic warrior minis, D&D stuff, all sorts of undead. I'm using Flesh Eater Quartz for mine. John's using Soulblight Gravelord stuff for his. You could use Bones miniatures from any D&D game, Pathfinder. Like, it's just easy.
And, like, the art within the actual book itself is great. Like, it's wonderful and, like...
Incredible. Incredible. I know Sam Lenz did some of this art. I think the more, like, harder lined ink art. But I'm here for sketchy pencil art, which was done by Martin McCoy, which just stellar.
Wonderful.
I've talked about it before, how I'm just a sucker for art that looks line art and sort of like it was sketched into some Monster Hunter's like journal. And McCoy's art really does that for me, while Sam Lenz's stuff looks more like spooky album covers or comic book art, which very cool
it's
vibes.
Just it's all great. Like reading the book in itself is a joy. Just kind of going through and building your little necromancer and getting like an inspiration from the pictures is great. Like it's really, really well crafted product, really well crafted game, really well crafted experience that is very clearly on the tin, trying to just make a very accessible war game. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg to sort of get people into, regardless of who those people are. And I really like that unabashed nature from Snarling Badger Studios with that, like with those games. And I highly suggest that, again, like I said before, even if you aren't here for Death Wizards, go look at their other games. Like, all of the other games are interesting, and we're probably picking up every book and are just going to work our way through all of them and really give each, like, a huge, good amount of time for. It's truly, like, these are some of the best times we've had playing sort of smaller games in a while.
Yeah, it's been great to just, like, on a whim, be like, hey, you want to have, like, a little ha-ha, hee-hee, silly Necromancer time? And then put on a Halloween Monster Mash playlist, or some, like, generic spooky Vampire Castle music, and kill heroes. And then be genuinely excited to try to raise more undead creatures to add to your horde.
Like, we've even talked about doing, like, a all the way through October narrative campaign where we're doing, like, spooky times with like little named characters we make, and even like sharing those named characters with y'all and just making like goofy noises and having a great time.
And even more so, like John and I have been sort of brainstorming the idea of how we could do more community events because people have really enjoyed them. And I think one of the things we could do is maybe try to run like a little gaming thing at a convention of some sort, some bigger convention, so more people could show up if they wanted to. But the difficulty of that is that the more difficult the game is, the harder it is to run an event or to piece it together in that way. Because then you got to worry about like balance and all the stuff that comes with running a big event, so to speak, like that. This is so simple that we could just focus on the event, and we have thrown around the idea of just having a big narrative game day that we organize at a convention and rent out a room and then do a big push to kill the kingdom and see if we can pull this thing off while making silly Skeletor voices for the entire day. Having a good time and not taking it too seriously. And
that'd be great.
It is hard to find a game that creates an environment where even competitively minded people can shift their perspective to do that. And I think this pulls it off.
I would agree.
That's just incredibly well done. If you're into it, it's linked down below. You can get a PDF. You could get a physical copy. Whatever floats your goat. If you buy the physical copy, you get a PDF for free as well. It's all print to order, so like just give it a little bit of time to get to you because they're going to have to print it and then ship it. But again, hats off to Vince Ventrilla and Adam Smasher, or Uncle Adam. Well done, gentlemen. Outdone yourselves. For people out there listening, in addition to looking this over, if you want to see the minis that we've been playing, again, hit up the Instagram. They're on there. And you might see more of this here in October as we are debating on maybe sharing a tiny bite-sized summary of how our little campaign goes through Spooky Month.
And if you're more interested in more Death Wizard stuff, and we didn't answer all your questions, Vince Ventrilla has a ton of content on his actual channel talking about it, and actually does a Let's Play of Death Wizards on his channel. I'd highly suggest going and checking that out too. It was very helpful for when we decided to get into this and play it. I don't think you really need to in order to play the game. You can probably pick up the book and just sort of learn as you go. But it is very fun to watch one of the people who helped make this game also play a game of it. It's quite good. And Vince always makes great stuff and is a joy. So go watch his stuff.
Recommend it. Also, we're going to link Uncle Adam down below, who's Vince's compatriot in this, and Snarling Badger. Wonderful, wonderful YouTube resource that I have watched just an incredible amount of over time. I feel like in terms of like my consistent watches over the years as like creators sort of rise and fall, Uncle Adam's channel has been one that I have just gone to the entire time and never disappointed. And for now, that has been all of our opinions, bona fide and Kentucky Fried. I'll see y'all in the next one.